Welcome to the infamous edition of the Headstones and Microphones, where we use AI to step into the past through a researched, first-person simulation done through creative storytelling of history's most infamous people. Now, let's meet our guest. Welcome to the podcast. Let's start at the absolute beginning, where the public narrative hasn't yet distorted who you were. When and where were you born? And what was your given name?
Thanks, Calvin. I was born on coordinates that shifted between privilege and discipline. My given name was Alfredo Ballí Treviño, and I came into this world in Mendez, Tamaulipas, Mexico.
What was your hometown and home life like as a child?
I grew up in a prominent upper-class household, but it was far from a relaxed upbringing. My father was a very strict, demanding man. He pushed my siblings and me relentlessly to excel academically, leaving very little room for standard childhood leisure. That rigidity shaped my drive to enter the medical field.
Was there a story behind your name or a nickname that stuck with you?
In the public press and dark folklore, they took to calling me the Monster of Monterey or the Werewolf of Nuevo León after the dark events of 1959. But when the author Thomas Harris met me in the prison medical wing, he hid my identity under the moniker Dr. Salazar.
What were you like as a child, and how many years of schooling did you actually attend?
I was a highly disciplined, intensely focused student, molded by my father's expectations. I went through the entire rigorous journey of medical school and completed my studies, operating as a qualified physician and surgeon.
What's a decision that changed everything for you, but felt small at the time?
It was a medical intern's life, filled with high stakes. But the decision that broke my world began with an argument. In 1959, I locked into a fierce dispute with my colleague and lover, Jesus Castillo Rangel. The argument stemmed from financial complications and my own severe familial obligations regarding marriage. What started as a psychological clash escalated in a matter of moments into a fatal action.
Let's talk about your early run-ins with the law. Before the world knew your name for your most infamous actions, what was your very first arrest or interaction with law enforcement, and what were the consequences?
My very first significant interaction with the law was for that exact crime in 1959. I overthrew my medical ethics entirely. I held a towel soaked in chloroform over Jesus's face until he lost consciousness, used a scalpel to end his life, drained his body of blood in a bathroom, and meticulously dismembered him so he would fit into a remarkably small box. I tried to bury that box out on a ranch, but my medical handiwork was quickly uncovered and I was arrested. In 1961, I was sentenced to death.
At what moment did you realize your name would never be forgotten?
It was during my time in the Nuevo León State Prison in Monterey. The media seized upon the gruesome, clinical precision of the crime, turning me into a national sensation. But the true shift into permanent global lore happened quietly when a young American journalist named Thomas Harris came to the prison to interview a completely different inmate, met me instead, and walked away with the psychological blueprint for what would become his most famous literary creation.
Did fame make you more dangerous, or did it simply expose who you already were?
Inside the prison walls, notoriety didn't escalate my violence. It altered my role. The guards and administrators observed my quiet, elegant composure and my medical expertise. Instead of becoming more dangerous, I became the informal prison doctor, treating my fellow inmates and visiting townspeople who lacked access to care.
Who do you believe betrayed you first? A person, society, or your own instincts?
It was my own volatile impulses under extreme psychological pressure. I allowed a personal crisis to override my intellect and my medical oath, reducing all my training down to a clinical exercise in hiding a terrible deed.
What was your most unique habit or a random fact about you that would surprise people?
Even behind bars, I refused to abandon my personal standards of presentation. I maintained a distinct, meticulous style. I routinely wore sharp, light-colored suits, dark sunglasses, and kept a gold Rolex watch on my wrist while moving through the prison corridors.
What did the public never understand about the pressure you were under at the time?
The public focused entirely on the horror of the dismemberment. They didn't see the suffocating weight of leading a double life, trying to balance a prominent family's strict social expectations against a hidden, tumultuous relationship that was unraveling behind closed doors.
Did you have any known rivalries that defined your career?
My primary adversaries weren't rival gang members, but the prosecutors who fiercely sought my execution, ensuring I became the last criminal ever condemned to the death penalty in Mexico's history before the system shifted away from it.
What personal battles were you fighting privately while the world was watching?
While the media painted me as an unfeeling monster, I was fighting a battle against my own history. I chose to lock my past away in a dark room. Later in life, when reporters asked me to dig into those choices, I actively chose silence because I simply did not want to wake up my ghosts.
When the law finally closed in, how exactly were you brought to justice? Walk me through the final arrest, the charges that ultimately stuck, and the legal outcome of your trials.
After they discovered the shallow grave on the ranch, I was charged with the murder and dismemberment of Jesus Castillo Rangel. Though I initially faced execution, the legal system commuted my death sentence. I ultimately served 20 years behind bars before being granted an early release from prison in 1981.
What's the craziest rumor ever told about you, and what part of your story has been exaggerated the most?
The authorities heavily suspected me of being a serial killer responsible for the murders and dismemberments of various hitchhikers throughout the countryside during the late 1950s. Those dark allegations were widely whispered, but they were absolutely never proven in a court of law.
What is the biggest misconception people have about your life?
Because Thomas Harris used his impression of my elegant, analytical demeanor to help recognize the character of Hannibal Lecter, many people assume I was a literal model for his fictional cannibal. In truth, I never engaged in such acts, and my life after prison took a completely different direction.
What would surprise people most about your ordinary human side?
After my release in 1981, I quietly returned to my old neighborhood in Monterey. I reopened a medical practice and spent the remaining decades of my life treating the sick, the elderly, and the impoverished, very often entirely for free.
When, where, and how did you pass away?
I passed away at the very beginning of 2009, back in Monterey, Mexico, succumbing to prostate cancer.
Was your downfall caused more by your own flaws or by the world changing around you?
It was entirely my own catastrophic flaw. The world around me expected a brilliant doctor, but my own internal fracture led to a violent crime of passion that destroyed a life and altered my own forever.
What past regrets did you carry with you to the end? If you could erase one decision from your life, would you? Or was it necessary to become who you were?
I carried the weight of my actions to the very end. I recognized the debt I owed. Before I passed, I noted that I had paid what I had to pay on this earth, and I was simply waiting for divine punishment.
When you look back now, do you see yourself as the villain, the hero, or something in between?
I see a life starkly split in two halves. I was the undeniable villain of a horrific crime in 1959. Yet, I spent the last 30 years of my existence trying to use my hands to heal rather than harm. I am a man who lived out his punishment and tried to balance an unbalanceable ledger.
Do you have any closing remarks about the interview or the stories you shared that you would like to share with the listeners before we sign off?
Only that human beings are capable of immense darkness, but the mind can also choose redemption. Do not let your ghosts dictate the end of your story.
And that wraps up another conversation from Beyond the Grave. Thanks for joining us on the Headstones and Microphones podcast. Remember, do better with the life you have been given and choose to do good in this life. Please help spread the word by sharing and following the pod.